Welcome everybody. It is my delight and honor to be stepping into the realm of sacred storytelling with you. And this morning I was sweeping the altar that exists outside my office space, praying to the spirit of story itself, just the spirit of story to be with us today. And I love it when you come and with questions and openness, it will often start responding. They say prayer is where you ask, and meditation is where your prayers are answered. And so we're going to do something a little bit different today in terms of a story that asked to come through to speak to all of you. So today we're going to do a little bit of like just a touching in with the self, why we're here. You're going to hear a short story, and then we're going to talk a little bit about what is this being of sacred storytelling. It's going to take about 40 minutes, and then for those who are complete, that'll be the introduction to sacred storytelling, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about a class that's coming up that starts tomorrow, and then we'll be complete. Okay, so I invite you to place your hands together and allow yourself just to put some heat in there. This is a little chi move. Chi move. We'll put some heat into our palms and really like do it. Like feel that fire and feel your intention and your care and your compassion for these times, and feel your passion for this life of yours, and feel your desire to be fully expressed. And I'm really inviting you just like put this straight into the hound, like creating this heat right here, and then placing that into your heart. Or if there's some other place in your body that needs that fire, maybe it's your core. Maybe there's a part of your body that is a little, it just needs it. And just take a moment to feel that release, and to see if your body can even surrender to receive all the energy that you generated. And can you feel the aliveness in the palms of your hands as they meet your heart? And I invite you in this moment to really consider, what is it that brings you alive? That brings you alive. And just allow the few things that come into your mind, like what are those things that bring you alive? That bring you to your joy, to your passion. Just allowing yourself to breathe into that. I'm going to introduce you to a meditation that I recently learned from a woman named Gigi. And it's so perfect for what we're doing. And with your eyes closed, imagine yourself, and you can either like place your hands around you. So I guess you can open your eyes just for a second to see this. I'm going to invite you to make a circle, or you can go above you. Or for those who are really inspired, you can even stand up and walk in a circle. Okay. And so I invite you to do this again. This comes from one named Gigi. And the meditation goes like this. This is my circle. And as you say that to yourself, you can say it out loud or you can say it inside, but I really invite you to like claim this energy. This is about boundaries. This is my circle. Or you can say, this is my circle. And feeling this energy around you. And my only job is to fill it with my sexual and creative energy. And allowing yourself to feel that sensation of that very clear boundary of energy that you just claimed around yourself. And that statement of filling it with your creative life force energy, that creativity, sensuality, sexuality, all comes from the same space, that second chakra. And just notice what it feels like to have a really clear boundary, both for really filling your space, but also having a boundary of limitation, not dispersing it. And just notice what that does to your body. The story I'm about to share with you asked to come meet you today. And so I invite you to listen to this prayer as if the story is a prayer for you, for your hearts, for what might be asking to be tended, for what might be asking to be listened to or spoken to. And so I start this prayer with the Storyteller's Prayer, which is, may all the words that need to be heard be spoken, and may all the words that need to be spoken be heard. This story woke up in the island of Kauai. I was driving down the street, and I was living there at the time. And driving in Kauai is a really pleasant experience. There's not a lot of cars, there's not a lot of rushing. There is a lot of aloha. Aloha is this expression of life that comes right through the words, through the way that you express it through your mouth. Aloha, this honoring of life. You always know when someone just got off the plane because they honk their horns. And it's like this very absurd thing. You're like, wow, you must have just come from California. That's what you say. I live in California, so I'm now used to being openly mocked. But when you're there, that's really what you're thinking. You're like these people who are so disconnected from, people and land and things. It's this stereotype that it comes from this place. And you can feel the difference. There's a dissonance in the energy, especially when they're honking their horns. And on this particular day, I was driving down and in a state of some kind of peace, some kind of grace, where I was just listening to all the things that were going by. And there was this car that was just honking, wouldn't stop honking. And it was that like beep, 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 the freaking car alarm. And I'm in this state of grace. And I'm in this state of life where I actually know what peace in my body feels like and connection feels like. And I'm feeling this disruption. And I'm like, who would do that to us? Like, who was the being that would create that much disruption intentionally to us? And that question is what invited this story into being. Once upon a time, there was this angel, and she was really something. I mean, she was skilled. She had techniques. She had a proven record. She was the angel who gave Beethoven his Fifth Symphony. I mean, she'd had a lot of, let's just say it, external success. The beings that she had supported found great fame, great money, great love. I mean, they just had a lot of fun living, and she had a lot of fun living with them. And she knew that this was her last gig. This was her last life as an angel, and she was assigned a very, very, very big job, but they believed in her. They knew she could do it. She knew she could do it. And so when she met this young boy at the beginning of his birth, she called him, and she whispered to him, and she sang to him all her love and all her belief in knowing that they had come together for a great purpose to bring great things to this planet Earth. And she loved him, and she walked with him, and she played with him, and she danced with him, and she kept him great company. And he did not have it, kind of easy. I mean, his was going to be a big initiation, for the task that she was to do with him was so clear and so big, and his parents had very different ideas. They wanted him to be a doctor, they wanted him to be a lawyer, those very set path a dentist would do. And he went to school, did all the things, and she kept whispering to him and singing to him and loving him and showing him the path and every dream that she could for what is possible, for where his genius lived through him. But he was very committed to listening to what his parents had told him to do. And he did it. He studied to be an engineer. It was good enough. He was good enough at it. And then one day he graduated and he was thinking about what was next. And it was this moment of opening. And she saw her chance. And so she realized that it was going to go by very quickly. He's not someone that had a lot of open spaciousness, she'd noticed over time. And so she runs to the car. They're at this intersection. And she runs to the car and she honks out the melody that would be the sounds of peace. It would bring peace to earth. I mean, with Beethoven, it was easier. There was a bird nearby, but in this city, all the birds were gone. All that was left that could make any kind of melody was a car horn. So she used what she had. And he heard that sound and he said, aha, I'm going to be an inventor. And he went off and he invented the car alarm. She couldn't believe it. She was here to help bring peace to the earth. He had it within him to play the chords, to teach others. And yet he had done the exact opposite. Well, she thought maybe love. If she could just bring him love, he could come to his heart. So she brought and introduced him to wonderful, beautiful, gorgeous women. No, wouldn't do it. She thought maybe soccer. If he gets into soccer, he loves being in his body. No, she took him to the ocean. No, nothing. He just invented more and more things of disruption. He didn't live a long life. Died in his late 60s or 70s. And there they were at the hospital, in that space between life and death, between here and there, when you can see on the other side of the veil. And there she was, laying in the bed next to him, withering away herself. And he puts his hand on her hand and holds it. Says, ah, there you are. And she's like, you know me? You see me? He says, ah, I've known you my whole life. She goes, but you've known me my whole life. Why haven't you ever listened to me? He goes, oh God, that whole peace on earth thing, it would have completely broken the economy. I mean, look what they did to JFK and Martin Luther King Jr. and John Lennon, for heaven's sakes. Why on earth would I do something that would create such death and destruction to my own life? No. I mean, all she could do was breathe. What about love? I introduced you to so many women. He said, I loved you. I loved you. And so I did everything I could to keep you close. And she placed his hand on her heart, and she placed her hand on his heart. And she felt the rhythm of their life, and a rhythm of truth, and a rhythm of fear, and the rhythm of love, and how they all live together. Ayo, 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 ayo. And so there's a little bit of an introduction to where a story can come from. And I invite you in this moment just to consider, what did you receive in this story? It's one of the things we always explore in our classes. What did you receive? What did it make you or invite you to consider? And you can place that in the chat box. What came alive for you in the listening? And as we do that, I'm going to introduce you to a couple of beautiful pieces of language. Um, Carolee is saying, I now am curious about how truth, love, and fear may always dance together in relationship to and with spirit. And Franklin saying, surprises, the unexpected accepting of what is. Jenny Joy saying, the last intimate piece of connection. Carol saying that in the invisible forces, our play, we must be attentive to now. And Mary saying, listening to spirit within you. And Dan and Leah saying, doing our job as directed may have nothing to do with how it is received or result that can be measured by our own standards. That dance of free will. I hope I say this night. What a beautiful name. Ronba Blanca. There's always a tone on love all around us. And Celia saying, instead of accepting the message of it, of as it was, he added his own ideas of how that would not be in the best interest, as if he already knew what following the path would bring. Melissa's saying that each person's relationship with the unknown is unique and valid, and when honored, can take us beyond duality to a place of presence of unconditional love. Mary Fran saying intimacy is sometimes unseen until death comes, or not at all. Yeah. Wow, that just got me. Moshe saying what we may think needs to be given us or put at risk to actualize the call being whispered to us. So much that you got. Diana saying the power of choice. I feel sad that he did not choose to communicate with his angel. They could have had a beautiful conscious relationship. I know. Rather than kind of talk about story, which we're going to do, I wanted to give you an opportunity to just feel a story and feel what they do to us, and or what they have, what they can do. And I had the opportunity of working with an amazing woman, Ellen Schneider, for a couple of years. She started Point of View, for any of you guys who remember that, at PBS back in the day. One of the first kind of really open-minded, giving many different perspectives on story. And she said that one of the most amazing things about story is this has this ability to bring a bunch of people that have different perspectives into the room and have a shared experience. And I so feel enlivened by just what you're just sharing, all the different perspectives, all the different kinds of listening, all the different things that came alive. And then what happens for us, like I thought of things I'd never even normally think about listening to some of the things that you received in the story. And one of the greatest mysteries, and I think it's almost like a magic trick, it's an illusion about storytelling, is that it's the person that's telling the story that has the power. There's an extraordinary thing that happens in storytelling, and it's one of the reasons why I am beholden and of service to it, is because I think in the practice of sacred storytelling, not just storytelling, but sacred storytelling, which is what we're here to talk about today, is that there's something that happens where you come into that universal principle of giving and receiving. And it's where we get to, you always think about like why people almost like, you start telling a story and people like, their childlike self just comes, like their body melts. They're like, oh, and they come into this place of receiving oftentimes. And there's not a lot of times in our life when I feel like we get to have that body memory of receiving. And so when we come into this expression of being in relationship to sacred storytelling, we're in this giving, right? You've got the storyteller who's giving. They're giving their life force, they're giving their heart, they're giving their intention, they're giving what they're in service to. They're giving their commitment to life through the expression of how it's living through them and their relationship to divine. They're inviting this energy into the space. This great collaboration, we'll talk about that. they're giving. And then on the other side are the sacred listeners, those divine beings who are in the garden, who are catching this. And this is where the power lives. This is where the illusion, this is where I want to break the illusion. The illusion is that the storyteller has the power. It's the listener who has the power. It's the listener who's the garden of consciousness, who will choose what seeds you will or will not allow to continue to live on in you. What seeds will you water? Will you give that story a voice again? Is it something that you will share? Is it something that you will allow to take seed in you and live through you? So I invite you to consider that. This is that expression of that giving, receiving, that component of that kind of like universal law of a good life, thriving, and it's this way that you get to be in relationship to that universal law through sacred storytelling. So let's come into this really basic idea of what is a story? What is a story? Let's all get on the same page on that. And if someone knows that that story was for them and that their heart called for it, do out yourself. I'm always curious why certain stories call to be told. And I've never told that. I haven't told that story in a really long time, but it wanted to come forth to you. Okay, so what is a story? Stories communicate the human condition. Yes, says Carolia. Sure do. I just saw the Sundance Film Festival. We just did a mini film festival with a bunch of friends, and it was online. And I just saw so many stories that broke my heart. Just broke my heart over and over and over again about the human condition. What else do stories do? They're a tool to keep culture alive. Yes. And that's kind of a trippy thing, right? Because stories, they ignore this basic law of entropy, right? This is like the basic law of our planet, entropy. Everything is eventually going to fall apart. Even the oldest statues will eventually wear down. The mountains will wear down. The houses will fall apart. Your cars are going to rust. It's like it's just the nature of being here. But stories break all the rules. We have stories that are over 4,000 years old, and they were carried from one voice, from one body to another, to another, to another, until we learned how to write. It's kind of mind-blowing when you think about that. This is a very powerful force that lives on our planet. It's an alchemical vessel containing ideas, principles, morals, and emotions, says Franklin. I love that. Love that. Melissa's saying it keeps communication alive and allows it to evolve. Ah, I love that. Our stories, I often like, we can't change our stories. They happened. Things happened to us or in our lives, but we can't change our stories, but our stories can change us, because we'll never be the same person that we were when that happened. Right? And we can change through that experience. So you can think about a really, I'll give you an example of this. And I think of stories like trees. There's this great TED talk by this man. If you look at TEDx Charlottesville storytelling, you'll find this talk. I wish I could remember his name. He's so amazing. And he tells a story about how when he was a little child, I think he broke his leg. It was a real bummer, and he had to be in a cast and all these things. He had something bad happen. And he had to spend a lot of time healing. And his mother said, "You're going to tell the story over and over and over again, and you're never going to say it the same way." And what a smart mom. Because what she did was she refused to allow him to stay as the person that accident had happened to. Okay. And so when we tell our stories, we allow ourselves to be evolved, like this alchemical vessel that can contain evolution, right? You can have these things that really are painful and create a lot of suffering in our lives, right? And we can call those the most sucky times from our lives, or we can, sacred storytelling, call them our initiations, where life initiated us, right? And what do we know about initiations is that we will not be the same on the other side. And the other thing is that not everyone makes it through initiations. So no, in our time, we're not losing an arm or a leg, but I think some people do lose their life force. So when these things that happen to us, or happen in our lives, maybe it's devastating heartbreak. Maybe it's we have some really big act of rejection when we're young and we don't have elders around to teach us how to make it through these moments. It means that we can go back as storytellers, we can go back to those moments and we can recalibrate and we can do some healing work. And we can actually work on the neuroscience of our brain, because what happens is we know that we get on these, it's like a racetrack. You say the same story over and over again. It's a racetrack, but then the storyteller, you can go whoop, and you can start another story. I'm not talking about lying, okay? I'm not talking about saying, look, I had cancer when I was 29. I can't ever take that back. But I'm not the same person who I was when that happened. I'm someone else very different. It was an absolute crucible in my life. And one of the most powerful things that got me through to understand the gift of that experience, mind you, I don't ever want to have to go through that again, was through the act of being able to tell my story. Through the act of telling a story created this space of reflection, this place of being able to change roles, to take on and really be able to articulate what in me had to go, what in me had to die, and then what in me came alive. And that's what happens in initiations. That happens for all of us. But we don't live in a time where a lot of people get to experience the different rituals, initiations that are happening through life. And so we don't always get to grok the wisdom and that version of ourselves. And like I said, not everyone makes it through alive. You know people who've had their heart broken and weren't ever able to love again. That's a massive initiation. So this idea of that, coming back to what Melissa was saying, that keeps communication alive and allows it to evolve. I feel like this is such a critical part about allowing your stories to grow. I think of it like a tree. You plant that seed, you don't want it to stay the size of a seed. You want it to grow and grow and grow into fruit and give apples and give shade and be wonderful. Same thing with your stories. I invite you to consider, how can your stories grow and evolve with you? Carol's saying that for her, a story is a way to communicate messages, to interconnect with others. Yes, I love that. And you're talking about an intention. We're going to talk about story and a sacred story a little bit. So Carol, just keep that. We're gonna flag this, because what you're talking about is seeding a story with a very specific intent. Sometimes I think of those stories like teaching stories. There's teaching stories that it's almost a lost art. The teaching story, I learned about this from, I was at the Bioneers conference, and I wish I could remember this guy's name too. Oh, so many wonderful pieces of information that come through. And he was probably a fellow in his 30s. I was in the Indigenous storytelling tent, and he was telling me about how the art of teaching stories were almost gone. They were almost dead, and he realized that he had actually not been raising his child with teaching stories. And there he was at the ceremony, totally embarrassed because his 3-year-old child was, bumping into people and cutting in line and taking food off people's plates. And all he was doing was running around, no this, no that, no this, no, 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 And he remembered that he needed to be able to call on a teaching story. And so he called for one, and he sat down with his son, and they made up this story about good otter and bad otter. Good otter does this, bad otter does that. It's a very specific kind of story, really about teaching morals and values. And all of a sudden, that story became his nanny, where all of a sudden, when they're out in public, rather than be the no, 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 you could call on the story and say, are you being a good otter or a bad otter? So I love that idea of really helping stories, put them to work for you, calling them as companions. Jenny Joy is saying that they're a thread of conscious connection. I love how engaged you guys are. Mary Fran is saying that, I love that. Yeah. What is a story? An account that has a connection, beginning, middle, and end, and completion. Yes. I'm going to say one thing. A lot of people say, they come to me like, I want to learn how to write a story. And I definitely create space for that. It's my passion. But I'm going to give away a little secret for you. You're right. Every story has a beginning, middle, and end. And you inherently, as human, made of stories, know how to write a story. You know how to put a beginning, middle, and end. There's a craft and a technique that makes it engaging and wonderful to listen to. But it's like this we are inherently, we know how to do this. Carolee says that what happened can be told in different ways. Through the story can shift. Yes. It's expression of weaving us into a greater whole, says Verda. And Jenny is saying, I don't know. I honestly don't know. I wish I did. Jenny Joy, thank you. Um, so oh, that's great. So here's the thing: a story, in very unpoetic expression, I call it. I reference it as humans often reference the latest technology to their body, and so in that way, I'm following that train of thought. I'm going to say that a story is an operating system, and in that operating system is our values, our beliefs, and what we believe is possible. And right, we transmit it, we share this, we give this. Okay. And I've been teaching that for a long time, and I was on a hike a couple months ago, and I was like, oh, that's such an ugly expression. For someone who loves language, it's such an ugly expression. And I was like, what about, something more beautiful and also something more true to it? And what's also true is that stories are, it's like they're the library of our consciousness, the libraries of our souls. And when you really understand a story, in order to understand a story, you actually have to understand the storyteller. And you have to understand where the storyteller lived and their relationship to their place. And once you know those things, then you might have a chance of beginning to understand that story. Because now you understand what could be spoken, what couldn't be spoken. Here's a crazy example of this. So many of you know the story of Medea, right? Do you know the story of Medea? It's a horrible story. For those of you who don't know, very quickly, it's a story about a woman who's, she was with Jason. She helped him get the golden fleece, but in helping Jason get the golden fleece, she killed her own brother. She killed her uncle, and then when he decided after they got married to help him, and then after they got married, things were okay for a little bit, and then he was wooed by the king of another village to get married, and that king said, "I'll give you my daughter." And so Jason goes home to tell Medea that he's going to marry this other woman, and she loses it, and she not only kills the princess, the king, and the two kids. Okay, that's the story that we have. It's a horrible story. Um, one of the things I'm very passionate about is working with healing these old stories, and I've done a lot of work with doing story ceremonies. And this story kept banging at my door asking to be healed. And I went to a friend of mine who I just cherished and I've done a lot of ritual with, and I was like, let's work with this story. And we got involved. We actually posted the event. A lot of people came to it. And one of the things that kept coming and alive for me is how much that story wanted to be in a state of forgiveness. And she came to me and she said, Leah, I am a mother. I can have no forgiveness for this character. I will not be engaging in this. And so I was like, okay. So I listened to her and I listened to the community that we were in. Like so many people, we sold like 60 tickets overnight. I was like kind of freaked out. I was like, whoa, people really want this. So I'm also feeling very responsible. So time goes by and we create the story again. This time I do it with a group of 8 advanced students in sacred storytelling. We go back to the story. We go back to really listen for what it's asking. Why is it asking to be told in our times? And why is it asking for the experience of forgiveness? We spent a lot of time with the story, and one of the things that we learned, just a little piece, is we had to go get to know the playwright Euripides. Well, Euripides was a really interesting character. And what they say now is that he was actually paid off by the town of the people who had that the king and princess who were killed by Medea, that those townspeople went and murdered her children as revenge, and that they paid Euripides, the playwright, to write this play so that it'd be memorialized in a different form of history, and that they wouldn't be blamed for it. So Euripides wrote the play, but then he got banished because no one had ever written a play that showed a woman being that powerful. So now when we're looking at this story, we're looking at a story of great complexity, right? Because in our modern times, when we keep repeating it this way, it creates this primal fear of women. They can give life, they can take it away. How dangerous is the mother? I would say that story, when we look at that story, what kind of harm has that created, into our relationships between men and women? When there's so much bashing about the patriarchy, if you look at that word, we're looking at the patriarchy is fine. It's an immature form of a masculine, that is of concern, right? And so where you can even look at how can that story be partially responsible for that kind of relationship. So I mentioned this. So anyway, we ended up doing the story, and in order for us to tell the story, we had to tell the story of how the story had come to us. It ended up being this incredible story. I've never told this story before. I don't know why I'm doing this with you guys before, but it was a really incredible experience. We had 200 people show up, and we did this ritual storytelling where we brought people through this different initiation of processes that took us on the journey of the story that ended with a massive forgiveness prayer, where people had an opportunity to do Ho'oponopono, which is a Hawaiian forgiveness prayer, and come to what is asking for forgiveness. And it ended up being an extraordinary experience. I'm telling you this because we're coming out of the conversation of what is a story and what is a sacred story. And to me, a sacred story is something a little bit different, very different, actually. The sacred story is something that has a life inside of it. It has a divinity in it, and we all use different words. So I'm going to use all of them. Some people use the word muse. Others use the ancestors speaking through them. Others say that it's the earth speaking out loud. Others will say it's God or guides or angels. What I understand as a creator and as a conscious creator is that it's all the same energy, which is life force. It's life force, and that our story, who was it? Someone, I can't remember exactly who now had said that Franklin, had said that a story is an alchemical vessel, right? I love this. I think of that too. That story is a vessel that holds the energy of spirit, and then it comes through us. What do we know about metaphor? That metaphor is the language of spirit, and stories speak in metaphors. What I understand about these times, and a little bit of my history is that I started off in professional theater, went to New York City, studied professionally there, realized I was not cut out for it, fell in love with the wilderness, studied environmental education, studied experiential education, wilderness leadership, because I was really passionate about the environment. And ended up working with Al Gore to produce the Green Channel. I really had this idea that in order to protect the planet, we needed to be able to heal ourselves. If we can't heal the planet, we can't heal ourselves. It's a very intertwined connection. I even love it. You can even take it deeper. It's like if you know your biology, that our bodies are the exact same distribution of water and land mass as the Earth herself. It's kind of mind blowing. And so with that, we spend a lot of time working in the media and stories on how to save the planet and how to get people to save the planet. And if there's anything that I know as a sacred storyteller, and as someone who's lived and breathed deeply in the media world and has seen what the danger of information is doing to humans, and one of the reasons why it's such a painful experience to be living in the information era is because humans are made of stories, and we metabolize and make meaning through stories. We're not computers. We don't make meaning through data. If you've ever been in a room that has gotten a lot of information and you're attuned to energy, you'll notice that all the energy goes whoa, because we can't process. And so I really, it's like, I think that the earth is going to be fine. The earth has gone on for a long time before us. It's going to go for a long time. I think that a lot of people will figure out how to continue to live on this earth. We know that we're at a reckoning point and that things are going to change. What I think is at stake is our humanity. And how will we live with the consequences of not fully coming into our potential as conscious creators? And storytelling teaches us about what it means to be a conscious creator. It's like we know that we create on this planet. That's our gig. If we're not making songs, we're making bathtubs, we're making dinner, we just make things. We're creators. We can't help it, creating emotions. But we're at this evolutionary point, and someone else was talking about that, right? Like this evolutionary point where we didn't always have all that information to show us the consequences of what we create. And now we're in this amazing moment where we can actually see it, know it, and understand it in our interconnectedness. This is extraordinary time. You know, it's like the fact that these are bad, horrible times, that's just an interesting story to take note of. Because another thing is like these are extraordinary times. We've never been able to be this aware of ourselves before that we know of, that I know of. And so I talk about this because to stand as a conscious creator is to understand your power. And Hawaiians believe that words are so powerful that they can put the earth into motion or slow it down. The Sicilians believe that words poke holes in the universe. I always think about that when I get a little heated and the anger starts to come alive. Like, careful, because you can't ever take it back. There's actually a word in physics that talks about how the energy of a word forever lives in the place that it was spoken. The Maoris say that words don't describe a thing, that they are the thing. And in Japanese, there's a word called kotodama, and it means word spirit. It's the spirit of the word before it's even spoken. So one of the things that brings me alive and that I'm very, very passionate about is storytelling. But not just any kind of storytelling, sacred storytelling. Being alive in these stories that give us and are committed to our life force and all life thriving. And when you're in the presence of a sacred story, to me, you're in the spirit and you're in the presence of spirit. Whatever that life force means to you, the spirit of life itself. And so you can tell a story about the Holocaust, or you can tell a story about drought. You can take people to the darkest expressions of humanity. But when it's a sacred story, it has a couple of very key ingredients. It has beauty, poetry, and a commitment to life. So in that way, stories can be guides because they can hold our hands and take us the hardest things to see and experience, but you know that they're trustworthy because they're going to take you out on the other side. And so this would be my plea for all of you as being so powerful in your listening, as listeners, knowing that it's what the responsibility of our time is to really be conscious about what stories will we carry. And I'm not taking a stand for fragility because I just want to touch on this because so oftentimes, you know, I live in Southern California. There's a lot of like, don't lower my vibe, you know, don't say that because it's not gonna feel good, you know. And it's like, I get it. But like as sacred storytellers, we need to be resilient. And we need to be strong and grounded in what we're in service to. And when you know what you're in service to and you know what role you play in the greater story of our life, it's not that it doesn't matter what happens, but it's like you're not going to get swayed by everything, right? Macbeth, you know, Macbeth is always going to be Macbeth at the beginning and end of every play, you know? They know what role they're playing. And so I invite you into that question of what are you in service to? What are the stories that you want to carry? And how powerful and potent can you be to be able to watch the stories go by and notice, is that a zombie story that's planting fear and hate? You know, is that a story that is planting possibility? You know, and you can watch them all go by and then decide consciously which ones I want to allow to live in this extraordinary vessel. And do I want to give my life to? I see you guys just going on talking about amazing things. So that is the end of the introduction to the realm of sacred storytelling. And if you have questions, by all means, you know, pop them on. And if you feel complete, have a wonderful day. May you tell stories in powerful ways. I'm going to stay on for 15 more minutes, and I'm going to share about the School for Sacred Storytelling and what we have cooking, and Eros, which is a class that begins tomorrow, which is a 6-week class. So, you know, one of my passions is really about this weaving between connection to earth, connection to humans, and connection to like really thriving on this planet. And when I made that prayer for like, how do I do my thing? It's like, how do I play a part of the healing on our planet that I am living in at this time? This is the greatest story of our time, right? And like even just that reframe, like what if it's not a race to save the planet, but just like a what if we can slow to restore the planet? And when I came to that big prayer, it's a long story that I tell in other classes sometimes. But my prayer was really about what revealed to me is like how to be a bridge, and that bridge happens through story. And after working with Al Gore's television network and producing the Green Channel and seeing what people were watching, and noticing that people weren't taking in the information, they were taking in the stories. And I was like, gave me the keys to my own liberation. I get to go be where my passion is and where my genius lives. And that genius isn't like, when I say about that, it's not an egotistical thing. It's like in ancient Rome, when it was your birthday, they would celebrate the genius that lived in you. It's that spirit that lives through your life, and we all have a genius that lives in us. And to me, when you come into relationship with story, it's an opportunity for you to come into relationship with that creative life force and allow it to live through you. And when it lives through you, it's like, well, bam, life force in all parts of your life. It's really fun. So as I started off creating these programs that would introduce people into this realm of sacred storytelling, and what I realized, we'd have these 6-month programs, we'd bring in these phenomenal teachers, it was really fun, but we weren't getting in deep. And we weren't getting to the depth of where people's blocks were or where their barriers were, or we weren't getting into giving them enough practice time to really come out with a story that they felt really confident and really like proud to share. And for me, what I understand about sacred storytelling is that when you say yes to being a story, it's like in a storyteller, it's like you're saying yes to your friends, you're saying yes to your family, you're saying yes to your community, you're saying yes to becoming an elder. And I know plenty of elders that aren't elders. I know plenty of youngers who are on the path of becoming an elder. And what that means is that you have an eye on the 7 generations behind you. And if we know that the stories are the one thing that we can leave behind, that can't be burned or destroyed or buried or anything, but they can continue to be carried, this feels like legacy work to me. What's the story that you're going to leave behind? So I created this program that was really designed to, I realized it wasn't just about storytelling, it was really about getting to the core of who are we as conscious creators. And so I'm going to share my screen. I'm just going to show a couple of things to you. You're welcome, Carol. And if you have questions, by all means, pop in. I'm not going to give you the full tour of this, but this is a program, and it is a program that's designed to really fully bring you into your full potency and power and life force while teaching you the skills of sacred storytelling. And what I understand about sacred storytelling is that it holds the mysteries of, like, once you really get into becoming a storyteller, it holds you the histories of like how to be a good human. It's one of the reasons why I love teaching it. This is a video, by the way. If you want like the full scope on it, you can always go back. And I'll put this link in the chat box for just a second. So the thing that I want to show you is that I'll show you 2 things right now just about the program as a whole. The program is supported by over 35 guest teachers. And these are people who come to do the work to help us really do the work of understanding who we are in these times, who we are as conscious creators, and expanding the edges of your own considerations and giving you the practices to explore that with creativity and play, which I just love. So these teachers I'm so committed to diversity of race, age, perspective. You're going to hear Indigenous voices, you're going to hear young voices, you're going to hear elders, and I'm just delighted. Every time we come with a guest teacher, I'm just delighted. The way that the program works is that it has 11 modules, and it's designed like a circle. So we start on one side, we have these sanctuary modules, which are called also discovery modules. And this is where I think of these classes are like, think of Marie Kondo meets the artist's way. And they are this full immersion, creativity expression. Our next class that we're teaching is Eros, which starts tomorrow. And our focus is on that second chakra. And that second chakra, we started this class of this is my circle. My only job is to fill it with my sexual and creative energy, right? We're looking at the connection between what is our creation energy. And our creation energy is expressed through giving birth, having sex, but also through painting, through drawing, through gardening, through cooking, through singing. Our creativity can be expressed in how we walk down the street. And so it's really looking at what is your stories around that? What are the stories that are living in your second chakra? And how can we play with them? And so we engage this great creative process. I'm going to go in a little bit more about that. Then what we do is we take, in terms of how the program works, we take a 2-week break and we come out to tell the wisdom story. And that wisdom story, I talked a little bit about it before. It's that story where we take an initiation of life, a particularly sucky moment, and we glean it for everything it's got to give us. And you get to come into this whole experience of transforming one of those stories into a wisdom stories. And a lot of people will come to me and they're like, I don't have a wisdom story. And I say, at the end of this course, you will. And it's a 4-week storytelling skills class. Then we take 2 weeks off. We take some break. I think then it's probably like summer break or something, spring break. We come into that third chakra, shine. We're looking at your relationship to power and purpose. Where this is so core as a storyteller. This is where your voice comes from. This is where your form of expression comes from. This is where a lot of people can get locked down. And so again, we look at how do we shift and transform that energy. So I'm not going to go through all of this. We have a video that goes through all of it in great detail, but you see the process of how it goes through. We work on who you are as a conscious creator, and then we look at who you are as a storyteller, and we weave them together so that you get to play. You get a lot of play. One of my favorite things that anyone said was they said, I fired I fired my therapist because I was getting more out of these classes. And it made me laugh. These classes are not therapy, but they can be therapeutic, and they are really fun. I'm just going to show you this one last thing. This is Arrows. This is the class that's coming up, and that starts tomorrow. We meet on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and these are our guest teachers. Kate Singley is extraordinary, and she's going to talk about developing intimacy with the body. And Langston again is looking at our body and how we form relationships with it. Sophie Strand, if you're not familiar with her, she's just on fire, and she was talking about relationship with land and our arrows with land. So it's like we're looking at the big story. Then, oh gosh, Ashara is incredible, and she's looking at working with creativity as first responder, and she started a first responder creativity group. And then Day is also looking at working with creativity. He's very amazing, does work with these morning altars and create these extraordinary altars outside. So what you see here is this combination, this collaboration of alchemy of teachers that bring you into creative expression, and also looking at where you are in relationship to your body, which is how we express our creativity. The way that the class works is that it's for 6 weeks. I'm not going to go through all of this, but it's a 6-week class. And I'm going to turn this off just because we can stare at a screen and we can talk to each other, which is so much more fun. Or you can, Jackie, yes, we do have work exchange. So I'm going to go like this. Okay. Sorry guys, I can't talk and put links at the same time. So I'm going to put these links in, and then we'll do that. Okay. And so what happens is that we meet on Tuesdays from 11 to 1 Pacific Standard Time, and then on Thursdays we have that guest teacher. You can come live. Classes are very, very interactive. We work in small groups. We work in, it's a lot of like creating, sharing, witnessing, and you also get a small group that you work with outside of class, and that is your group of greatness. If there's anything that I like, we don't put in our marketing materials because it's not the thing that you really talk about in the marketing class, is the community that people experience. And that small group experience and the quality and caliber of people that come and are showing up for this work, it is a big part of the magic, and I would say medicine, that happens here. So if you miss a class, I always help people ask me, well, can I come and not attend classes live? Absolutely. That's the beauty of our time. The videos are on Mighty Networks right away. And I also I'm really honest with people. The thrill, the delight is coming to class and getting that small group experience where it's just super interactive. I'll never talk this much again in a class. Okay, I'm going to start looking at your questions now. If you have any questions, you can also just pop them up and ask them. So you can do the modules as a standalone thing without doing the full course. Yes, Caroline, it's a great question. So the course is designed to be in its wholeness. You know, it goes through the whole thing, and you are coming in on the third module right now. So there's opportunities where you say, okay, I want the whole program. And the whole program, it's at a reduced price right now because we've gone through. So it's normally $5,000, and now it's $4,400, and you still get those recordings of those last classes. And we do have payment plans. Someone just asked me about work exchange. I do have work exchange programs, and what I would say is like the reason why I created this program rather than just do one-off classes is because I understand the power of commitment. I understand that as a creator, as someone who has like produced plays, who's produced films, who's produced books. It's like when you are committed to something, it commits back to you. And when you really sign up to make a shift or transformation in your life in terms of how you show up as a storyteller, how you show up as a creative, when you have that kind of thing that holds you and holds you to your commitment, that's where I understand where real change can happen. And so as someone who is really committed to the people who come to these programs, I looked at what is it? What's the thing that would really create the most whole experience? But some of us can't do whole programs, and I get it. And that's why it's like the modules also stand on their own. So you can always come just for a module at a time. What I'll tell you blatantly is that you get a better financial deal when you sign up for the whole program. And it continues going on. So you can say, well, hey, I wanted to do Sanctuary live. I don't want to just do the recordings. That's fine. You can come back around and do it live because the program just keeps rotating. The cycle continues going. And we did a lot of people that did that last year, actually. They came in halfway through the program and they're like going to be finishing up, and it's working for them. I was really asking, does this work for you? And they're like, yeah, it really does. So each class does build on itself, and you get different skills in the different storytelling classes. So that is there. Thank you. Okay. Any other questions before I'm going to hop off, because we actually have an hour of the wolf story ceremony that's happening in just a couple of minutes, so I have to hop off right on the hour. How much are the individual modules? So Carolee, so the sanctuary modules, which that's 11 live classes, is $550. So that's 5 teachers plus me, and we can do it in one payment plan. There's all different kinds of ways if that's something that you really are passionate about. And then the story modules are $350. When you take it in the whole program, it adds up to being $450 and $250, just to be super blatant about how that works. And the reason why the prices are the way that they are is because we pay all of our teachers fairly. All the art that you see in our workshops, I pay all those artists. And so it's like, I always feel like it's part of our story, and part of my passion is being a story and an artist in this time, at a time that doesn't really completely supportive of artists that don't figure out how to work in a capitalistic society. And my mother was really passionate about supporting other artists. She's a painter, and I am also just really passionate about that. And so as I started to create the Sacred Storytelling School, I created a place where that also rises and helps support other artists of other disciplines in our process from every aspect of it. Oh no, thank you. I didn't need to justify the price. I just like telling people. Thank you for saying that. I like telling people because it's part of our story, and it's one that I don't get to share a lot, and people don't realize how many people are behind the scenes that are part of bringing this to everybody. So I'm going to leave you with a quote, and the reason why we end with a quote is because it's sort of like bowing to, it's like when you're in a Tai Chi class, you always bow to your Tai Chi teacher, but you're not just bowing to them, you're also bowing to their teacher and their teacher's teacher and their teacher's teacher. So I like to end with this. We think we tell stories, but stories often tell us. They tell us to love or hate, to see or be seen, and often, too often, stories saddle us and they ride us and they whip us onward and they tell us what to do, and we do it without questioning. The task of learning to be free requires learning to hear them, to question them, to pause and hear silence, to name them, and then become a storyteller. So Blessings, big prayers to all of you on your journey of sacred storytelling. Thank you for your profound, deep listening today. And you can all take yourselves off mute and give a hoot and holler to each other. And may your day be blessed with many more stories.
Thank you, Leah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Leah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Leah.
Thank you, Leah.
Thank you, Leah.
Blessings,
Everyone's
Leah.
wisdom.
And thank you to all the stories that have been holding our history.
Yeah.
Mm.
Thank you.